Okay, so hello everyone. My name is Alexis Haw. I am a junior at Sage Hill High School. I'm a participant in Dr. Wong's lab, and I'm helping build the Bridge Ventilator Consortium website. I'm here today with Dr. Thomas Milner. And then could you please introduce yourself a little bit?
Sure.
Could
So,
you maybe like expand upon your research and where your lab is currently located?
sure. Yeah, my name's Thomas Milner, and I was at the University of Texas at Austin for about 21 years, and as in the biomedical engineering department. Most of my research is related to photonics, using light for either diagnostics or surgery. And most of the applications have been in either cancer, the eye, or cardiology. Some in the skin. Um, I started here at University of California at Irvine in July 1, and I'm the director of the Beckman Laser Institute and running my own research program.
And what research topics are you currently working on?
Most of the research right now is in the heart. We're working on a device for crossing chronic total occlusions. And the eye, we're looking at ways to see um, Alzheimer's disease and related pathologies in the
Wow.
retina of the eye.
That's really cool, Tom. Is that are you doing that with what modality, if you don't mind me asking?
It's hybrid imaging. We call it scattering angle resolved OCT.
Oh, love it.
So,
Yeah. That's good.
yeah,
Phase resolved based on a phase
yeah,
math? Yeah, way cool.
yeah,
Way cool.
yeah.
And then switching gears towards more of the bridge ventilator, why did you join and then what was your role?
Well, so I started having discussions over email with Dr. Brian Wong, and he had mentioned this possible impending ventilator shortage, and he is just sort of sounding the alarm, I guess. I think one of the responses he got was sort of poo-pooing it, and I said, no, I totally with you, Brian. I'm with you on this one, and so it just sort of came together spontaneously, and we started building something back in my lab in Austin in March, and the whole ventilator consortium just came together, and each group working on any aspect of ventilation started reporting anything from news, new articles, companies were coming in. It just, the whole thing just really coalesced around the whole COVID pandemic.
And then could you talk a bit about your role in the Bridge Ventilator Consortium?
Sure, yeah. My group participated in it all the way through, and it started out where we would simply report what our progress on the ventilator that we've been working on, which we've named ABBU, for automatic bag breathing unit. And yeah, I worked with Govind and Brian, and just tried to provide whatever support I could to the overall effort.
And then do you feel that being involved in the BBC, it gave you a bunch of different resources that you might not have been available to if you did not join the Bridge Ventilator?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I brought in so many different kinds of people that I think everyone was kind of benefiting from each other in different ways. So, for example, some of the early, Dr. Rajan was providing a lot of the early clinical advice together with Dr. Brenner. We finally, Dr. Durdak, who came in to the project, I think probably early April, became a local resource, and he's actually in San Antonio, but been very helpful. But yeah, on every phase, we had regulatory people helping through the BBC. We had some of the companies like Virgin Orbit that developed their ventilator, provided lots of useful help for the regulatory submission. Yeah, it was extremely fruitful time.
Yeah. And then did you say it was called the, how did you pronounce it? The name of your ventilator?
Oh, ABBU, ABBU,
ABBU.
ABBU.
It's got
Yeah,
a nice ring to it. Could you tell us a
yeah,
little bit about like the fundamental mechanisms of it, like how it works?
yeah. When we started, yeah, I'm not in respiratory care, right? So
Yeah.
this was all sort of a new area for me in my lab. But yeah, we looked at the bags that are used to bag patients, and so we try to emulate the human thumb and how the thumb pushes on the bag. And so I think the first thing we tried was just something pushing down that was sort of static, and we realized that there was a lot of shear force if you just tried to push down on the bag. So we decided to use a caster wheel that could rotate, so that when the wheel pushes on the bag, it doesn't sort of slide across it, and by the wheel rotating. And so that's how we started. We went with the caster wheel, and it worked quite well, and we maintained that. We used a caster wheel that's about the width of a human thumb, about an inch, and that's what the ABBU uses today, is the caster wheel.
And then,
We've played around with the size of the wheel a little bit. I think it's a 5-inch diameter wheel, though.
and then in terms of like the current status of your ventilator, is it being manufactured or distributed?
Yeah, so we partnered with a company called Thermotech, and they're in Flower Mound, Texas, which is just right outside of Dallas, Texas. And they are manufacturing the ABBU. Right now, their first run will be 50 units, and those will end up in rural hospitals in Texas. And we hope once people start using it, that we hope to more people will appreciate its value and utility.
And then, so has it gone through the emergency use authorization from the FDA?
Not completely. We're still waiting to hear back. We've submitted the full application about 4 weeks ago, and we're waiting to hear back.
And what was that process like?
Well, it was kind of difficult for us because we did have a team of regulatory people, but we had never worked together as a team.
Yeah.
And so I think the expectations of the engineering team and the management team and then the regulatory team were very different. And so it was kind of a protracted process, because there's so much documentation that needs to come together to make that submission. But so many people, one of the very satisfying things about this project, pretty much everybody involved was doing it just on their own time and donating their own time and efforts to make this work. And that's pretty much what happened with the regulatory as well.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Lots of documentation that we ended up putting in. It's probably 1,000 pages.
Oh my.
How long did that take to collect all that information and get that all processed?
Oh gosh, it took, we started that process, I would say, beginning of April, and we submitted it probably the end of June. So April, May, it took about 3 months.
Wow, of like intense just working on this to get it through.
Yeah, and coordinating it, right? That's the real challenge, is coordinating. And that's where I think, at least from my point of view, there was kind of a breakdown, is that I thought, okay, you have a regulatory team, they should just pick up and prepare all the documents and submit it, but it didn't turn out that way. So,
was it like communication between like your engineers and then their needs, and then just the back and forth, or?
Yeah, so we started putting everything in a Google Doc,
Got it.
And then the regulatory people were always kind of upset in the sense that our design wasn't completely nailed down, right? So
Oh,
the
okay.
idea is that they want final sort of,
Oh,
this
yeah,
is
yeah,
the
yeah.
way it is,
Yeah,
right? And we were still kind
Mhm.
of
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
perfecting things. And we decided pretty early on, I think probably in late April, that our ventilator, our breathing device was going to have patient assist, which means
Mhm.
you look for the patient when they try to breathe, and
Mhm.
then you give a breath when the device delivers oxygen when the patient tries to breathe. And that brings the ventilator into this whole new category that
Mhm.
has a much higher risk profile.
Got it.
And so developing that patient assist and all the
Mhm.
documentation
Mhm.
around it uh, lengthened
Sure.
the, the project out. But and I feel very good about
Yeah.
the device.
No,
It's
that's awesome. I mean,
Yeah.
that functionality is just like that elevates it to a whole new level because makes it even more readily translatable to what they
yeah,
currently have, and that's awesome. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So it's basically the difference between asynchronous breathing and
Mhm.
synchronous. So
Mhm. Mhm.
you're trying to make the machine be in synchrony with the patient,
Mhm. Mhm. Mhm.
but it has to be able to recognize,
Mhm.
well, if the
Yeah.
patient's not breathing, it
Then
still
I gotta
needs to
give a
give a
I
breath.
gotta give a breath. Yeah.
Yeah, and how much you give. And we were very fortunate. We had Stephen Durdak, who's worked essentially his whole life in ventilators. He provided, I mean, he really was the guy telling us how this thing needs to be
Got it.
designed. We were pretty much just engineers building it according to his specifications.
Mhm.
Mhm.
And then, where did you get the funding for this development and manufacturing for your ventilator?
So that came through a variety of sources. I'd say three or four. One, the Dell Medical School in
Mhm.
Austin was able to raise funds from some of their donors. And then the Innovation Center in the College Cockrell School of Engineering was able to raise funds from some of their donors. Um, we also received funding from UT Health Sciences Center San Antonio. There was some special COVID grant money that the UT Health Sciences, or they call it UT Health, was providing. And that's what's funded all the pig studies that we've done. We've done 5 pigs now. In fact, we did the last pig we did was just yesterday. I just flew back
Nice.
from the experiment. Um, and so UT Health in San Antonio provided funding, and then we're looking to do a clinical trial as
Oh,
well.
fantastic.
Did they, since it sounds like pretty local donors, did they get in contact with you or did you have to reach out to them?
In the case of Dell, I think Dell has a fundraising group, a development group, I guess you'd call them, and they reached out to some of their donors and described the projects. And and then the Texas Innovation Center, it was now I sometimes needed to meet with the donors when they had questions about what we were doing
Mhm.
Mhm.
and so on. But yeah.
Cool.
And
That's
then, how
awesome.
much would it cost to buy one of your ventilators?
To buy one, the cost is definitely less than 2,000, but above 1,500. So it'd
Okay.
probably be about 16, 1,700, something like
Yeah, I mean, it has a breathing assist mode.
that.
It's
Yeah,
fancy.
yeah.
And then,
It took a while to develop that breathing
Yeah,
assist
yeah, I
because
would
there
imagine
really
that's
are so
a
many things that can go wrong.
oh yeah, I can imagine, Yeah.
Yeah.
you were saying that it was going to be released in the hospital at Austin, did you say? So it's not available?
We're going to do a clinical study, or planning to do a clinical study at UT Health in San Antonio.
Right.
Um, Now, in a lot of the development, especially the patient assist, we've actually, and Dr. Durdak, he's been caring for patients on ventilators for decades, and so he could emulate all sorts of breathing styles. So
Cool.
he would actually just we gave him one, and he would breathe into it in all sorts of different ways a patient would breathe into it. He'd pant, he'd cough, he'd, choke, all the different ways a patient, right? And we would be recording the data and then download that and then go make software adjustments.
Oh,
So
yeah.
we iterated that many, many times.
Wow.
That's a really great approach. I mean, I really like, even if you do like big data mining and you like even want to make it sophisticated with like an AI, and that's really cool. It's really, really
Yeah,
cool.
and it turns out if you've done much biomedical, eventually your animal models sort of hit the wall, right? They don't simulate people,
Sure.
right? They do up to a point, and that's kind of where we got. It works great with pigs, but a pig is not going to start coughing,
Yeah.
or there's certain things they just don't breathe that way. So.
Yeah. Could you maybe describe the most difficult part or challenge that you faced during this whole process, and then another one about the best part?
Yeah, the most difficult part, I think, was just the coordination, logistical coordination, right? And because when you're bringing a device to market, I've developed a few devices. It's about a third regulatory, a third engineering, and then a third sort of fundraising, right?
Okay.
And I think the most difficult part for us was pulling all the regulatory together and getting that to coordinate together with the rest of the project. That's what I would say was the most difficult part. The medical and the engineering, I think, went really well. And the ABBU team, we've worked together for so long that all of us know each other. It's like a little family. And so, when something goes wrong, you sort of joke about it. Oh yeah, that was because you had a beer too early or whatever. There's just camaraderie, right?
Yeah.
Everyone's very forgiving and so on. But the regulatory, because the cultures were so different and we hadn't worked together, I think that was the most difficult part.
Yeah.
They need to have more scientists in law firms, clearly.
Yeah. And part of it was too, the regulatory team were great.
Oh,
but
yeah.
They were like in teaching mode. So when we meet, they were like trying to teach us what to, and it's just, it took a while.
Yeah, totally.
But we got it out. The best thing, I think, I still think, is that everyone did this just because they wanted to do something in response to the current crisis.
Yeah.
And people, especially early on, some of the engineers in my lab, I mean, they were working long hours and making some pretty big personal sacrifices with their time to get the thing moving forward, or to keep it moving forward. And but everyone really just stepped up to the plate, and so that was, normally in a normal times, everyone's sort of motivated that, hey, we got to get this device out because we got investors. The investors, it's all driven from, we want to help people, but there's a process behind it. And usually there's investors, and they invest because they want to get a benefit on their investment. And it's the same end goal, but the motivation and the criteria is a little bit different. So it was kind of rewarding to be part of an effort that was just, hey, we're responding to a societal need right now, and we feel good that we're able to sort of contribute something that might help.
Yeah.
Do you think it's what do you think about the validity of like that moving forward? Do you think we're at a point now where, like, the government is talking about having a plentiful stock of ventilators? I know in Texas it looks a little bit crazy right now. I'm just wondering, like, your thoughts on that. Like, ventilators, do you think like a household would want a ventilator like this, or does this fit in a hospital? or like, how?
I think, where these devices will be used, and we've had discussions with different rural hospitals. So, for example, the ABBU are in our intended use document. It's basically to be used when there's not a conventional ventilator available, right? So now where can that occur? Well, it could occur if there was, this overwhelming crisis and all the ICU beds fill up and you run out of ventilators, which that's probably not going to happen in at least widespread. It may happen locally here and there, but yeah, it's probably not going to, at least in the United States. So where it could help, where they could be used is in, I would say, rural areas that don't have any ventilators, or the ones they have are so old, there's nobody who even knows how to use them.
Got it. Yeah.
We ran into that where, we have 2 ventilators, but no one's used them in the last, 25 years, and no one knows how to use them now, right? So that's the kind of situation you could see in the United States. But outside the United States, there really is a need, right, for a low-cost device that could keep someone alive for a few days.
Definitely.
So that's where these will probably end up for the most part, I think. And that's probably, I expect to be one of the benefits that comes out of this whole effort.
Yeah, no, that is like awesome. I think that's a really, like, you found the market and it's like a niche thing and it's helping them out, and that's really cool. That's all right. That's awesome.
And then lastly, is there anything you would like to add or comment on?
Well, it's just great to see so many different people come together and, do something beneficial for the society. And, there's a number of projects that have spun out of this whole Bridge Ventilator Consortium, right? And there's many, and it's a very unusual time, and calls for very sort of unusual interactions or unordinary, and it's just, I'll always look back on it as a very satisfying time and experience. And I learned ABBU actually means in Urdu, which is, they speak Urdu in northern India, Pakistan. It means I love my father.
Yeah.
Really? I learned that just the other day.
Yeah, I thought it was on purpose.
No, I learned it just the other day, and it was like, wow, I didn't know that. What does that mean? But it means I love my father. And
that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for joining us and answering a
few
questions.
Okay. Yeah, glad you're doing it. Let me know if I can help any additional ways.